Hey guys, I'm CG Wong, and I'd like to invite you to a very raw edition of my podcast. I'd like to talk to you today about vulnerability. Vulnerability as an actor, vulnerability in front of the camera, in front of an audience, in front of a room full of people who are filming you. So I felt like the most honest way to record a podcast about vulnerability is to make myself as vulnerable as possible. And so you might notice from the decor that I am filming this in my daughter's room, who happens to be a YouTuber and like an actually good YouTuber. And so she has a lot of practical lights, practical meaning just regular lights in the room, like that mushroom lamp in the background and that butterfly LED thing. So I'm just using whatever available light is coming in from the window, which is not a lot because it's sort of around golden hour and the light is not really directed in this window. But it is what it is. Hopefully it looks okay. And the one area I'm trying not to compromise in is sound. So I'm still using my professional microphone, but I've stripped it down to the bare essentials. So I don't have my usual, aesthetic, nice looking editing bay in the background with the lights. I've gotten several comments and compliments about the lighting that I use, and I really appreciate it. It makes me feel great. But you will see none of that now. I'm just using what I have available. And here's the thing: if you know me in real life, you'll know a couple things about me, and one of them is that I never release video of my work that hasn't been polished and worked on. And, I hold myself to a very high standard. So I don't put anything out that looks remotely raw or unprocessed or unworked on. So it's a very difficult task for me to just push record on an iPhone, which I never shoot my podcasts on, and just film. But here we are. And I think, this is the most honest way to do it. I also didn't script this at all. I research my topics. I write extensive scripts. I make notes. I do references. I find video examples, and then I plan them out weeks in advance. It's all very scheduled. I'm dropping this tomorrow, no matter how it comes out. So hopefully it'll look okay, because I want to do minimal editing and post-processing, all in the service of the topic we're going to talk about today, which is vulnerability. So I started thinking about this topic a few weeks ago, about, being vulnerable as an actor and what that means, and how important that is to the process and to creating performances that are memorable and effective. So when I was at NYU, I spent a semester studying at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. And we were studying Shakespeare and performance, and it was a really great experience, and I had so many great teachers and different methods and techniques. But there's one class in particular and one exercise that just has been burned into my brain and my memories, and it's probably the most uncomfortable I've ever been in my entire life. Here's the other thing you'll know about me if you know me in person. I am a very reserved person. I kind of enjoy the idea of being invisible, unless there's a camera on me or I'm on a stage and the time calls for, but even then, what made that comfortable and possible for me is the idea of being a character, being someone else. Me as a person, I don't particularly enjoy a lot of attention or, being singled out in a group. I just kind of like to blend in, and I don't like to draw a lot of attention to myself. And so I when I was younger, I subscribed to the false notion that I was mostly invisible, like a ninja. And I was really obsessed with ninjas as a kid. I don't know. Yeah, so, I created this false narrative that people never saw me unless I wanted them to see me. It's ridiculous. I was young, Anyway, we were in this class, and, there were 16 of us in the room, and the exercise was that we were to walk around as a group, just walk around the studio, just observing who we were as people. And so after a certain amount of time, everyone else, like 15 of us, would stay in the room, in the space, and one by one, we would sit on the other side of the room and just watch the group. And whoever was sitting, in that one isolated spot would watch as 15 other actors mimicked you. They mirrored your walk, talk, your mannerisms, your tics, your twitches, the little things that you think that you do but nobody sees you doing. And this wasn't just simple mimicry. I mean, this is 15 highly trained actors basically becoming a mirror of you. And it was the first time in my life that I'd ever participated in an exercise like this. And it was one of those things that completely caught me off guard. I did not expect to have such a visceral and confusing and dare I say almost volatile reaction to seeing a group of 15 people be me. How I walked, how I carried myself, little habits I had that, things that I didn't think anyone picked up on. And again, I might have mentioned this already. I was operating under the false narrative that for the most part, I was able to remain invisible in most rooms and not draw too much attention to myself, not be seen unless I wanted to be seen. And so here I thought I was, for the most part, camouflaged. And all of a sudden, there's a room full of people that look like or act like or behave like me. And it blew my mind. I didn't know how to react. In fact, I had to excuse myself from the room and leave and just sort of recompose myself because I didn't know what to feel. I didn't know how to process those emotions. And what I realized later in hindsight was that for the first time in my adult life, I was feeling vulnerable in a way that maybe I haven't felt since I was a kid, completely exposed and just completely seen. And for somebody who doesn't particularly enjoy being seen out of character, that was rough. And so I've had, a couple decades to process that experience that is still very raw, and it's going to stay with me forever because it really imprinted itself on my psyche and in my mind. And so I think one of the most important things, one of the most useful things that an actor can learn or train themselves to do is to allow themselves to become vulnerable in situations where your instinct might want you to cover up and hide. So I want you to think about the idea that sometimes actors want to hide behind a character. I did that. This is coming from personal experience. The way I reconciled being an introverted person, who was kind of shy, reserved, was not looking to be the center of attention. But then when it came time to perform in front of an audience, in front of a camera, on a stage, it was like I was a completely different person because I wasn't me. I was the character I was playing. But in many ways, I was hiding behind the character. I was hiding behind the character, their mannerisms, their personality, their wardrobe, It was somebody else. It was not me. But while I was doing that, while I was hiding behind that character, what was missing, I realized, was the element of myself that the audience could see if I made myself vulnerable, if I allowed parts of myself to be exposed and be seen by the audience and blend with the character that I'm playing. Now, this doesn't mean I'm reversing my position on something I talked about in an earlier episode about actors needing to protect themselves, that I didn't think it was psychologically beneficial or particularly healthy for actors to expose certain traumatic events in their lives and use those in the way that maybe a method actor would, either put themselves through extreme situations to experience those emotions in real life that parallel what the character is going through, or draw from a potentially hurtful and painful, well of emotions and trauma. I just don't think that's healthy. And this is not necessarily about, taking your own personal trauma and infusing it with the character. I think it's more about letting your parts of your soul that you normally keep hidden and protected and allow them to be seen by the audience, to feel those emotions that the character is feeling, not necessarily dragging your own trauma into the situation. And this ties into something I talked about on the Tuesday episode this week about the best acting training, the best acting school for actors is a life that was well lived, that's a full and well-rounded life, because those experiences that you have in the world, those adventures that you go on, the love and the loss and the things that you feel, they imprint themselves on you, and you understand how a person navigates and deals and faces those situations. And so I think that's all tied in with, allowing yourself to become vulnerable. And so the audience can see your truth and your soul and what you are feeling and what you are thinking, as opposed to hiding behind a mask or hiding behind a character. I hope that makes sense. Man, my head is shiny. Shouldn't have looked at the monitor. See, what I just did, nothing impedes a performance more than the focus on self. I think one of the things that you should always be striving for as an actor is to take the focus off of yourself and put it onto the character and onto the moment that you're in. For example, the more time you spent obsessing about, is my face shiny? Is this my best side? All these things detract from you being present in the moment and in the scene. So I believe that one of the things that you should always be striving for is to take that attention off of yourself and focus on being present, being vulnerable, being in the moment, and stop thinking about all those other things that have to do with, your vanity or your ego or anything like that. It's all about telling a story. It's all about being present in the moment and always coming from a place of truth, which, by the way, is not only important when you're performing, when you're delivering a performance on film, on stage, but also in the audition process. I did this masterclass many years ago with a very well-known actor who's been in everything. And he's probably said this in other classes and other places, so I don't think I'm, giving away a personal, private, secret of his. But I won't say his name just in case. So one of the techniques that he used, he talked a lot about the idea of getting the attention off of yourself, not focusing on you. And so one of the tricks that he used to do when he went into auditions is he would take cereal and he would pour some into his underpants. The reason he did this is that, for one, it's very hard to be obsessing about, how your hair looks, your face, if the clothes you're wearing make you look whatever, when you're walking and kind of crunching. It really helps taking that focus off yourself. And so he would do this anytime he went to an audition, and the last thing he would be thinking about was all the stuff that you're not supposed to be thinking about when you go into an audition. The focus was taken off of that, off of himself. And it also provided him with like a little secret. One of the best advantages that you have as an actor when you go into audition, what differentiates you from the hundreds of other actors who are also reading for this role is that you are you. You're the only you that can portray this character, that can be this character from your vantage point, from your perspective. So the most unique thing about you playing this character is the fact that you are playing the character, right? And so that involves being vulnerable, allowing yourself to be open, and having that something special that you bring to it that nobody else does. And for him, and some days it's easier to do this than others. And a fail-safe for him that always worked is this cereal trick, because he went into the room and there was something like a secret that he had. There was something that he knew that no one else did. And that intrigued people. That always got people's attention. Like, something about him is different. And granted, he's an incredible actor. He's charismatic. He's dedicated, and he's amazing at any role he takes on. So there's already something special there, but having this technique just added that little extra. And he said that, it was especially helpful in days that sometimes he just wasn't feeling it. There was a failsafe, and he had that little trick. Now, I'm not suggesting that you pour cornflakes in your underwear and go to an audition, but take from that the idea that the focus and the attention should be off of self and onto the character and onto being present in that moment, and allowing parts of you and who you are to be open and vulnerable and accessible to your audience. So that's what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. Thank you to every single one of you who subscribed, because it's nice to feel that there's somebody out there listening to this, and hopefully, even if one person finds something useful. There you go. There's a little more vulnerability. All right. I'm going to stop now, because that's a lot of vulnerability for one day. I think we're going to wrap that up. Yeah, but we'll see how this goes. And, maybe we'll do more episodes like this in the future. It'll help me as an artist to be vulnerable and be open. And something on my personal to-do list in terms of things I want to do to grow as an artist is to hide my brush strokes less. I think it was Matthew Weiner who said that somewhere, creator of Mad Men, about learning to not hide his brush strokes, not giving the appearance that the things that he put out that were brilliant just came to him in a vision or in a moment of spontaneity, and he just released this genius into the world that it was actually very methodically done and painstakingly put together and worked on. He called it hiding his brushstrokes. So, and that's something that I've always done. But it's always been in conflict with my desire to help other artists grow, and teach and pass on whatever knowledge I have, because I've always had an innate desire to share, anything that has worked for me. Not as like, a rule, this is how you have to do it. This is stuff that has worked for me. And if it worked for me, then maybe it could work for someone else out there. But of course, that has always kind of been in conflict with the desire to hide those brush strokes, because whenever you share stuff like this, you have to be vulnerable. You have to be, if the best way to be helpful to someone out there is to show them, hey, this didn't work as easily as it looks. I mean, the end product may look deceivingly simple or haphazardly put together, or a stroke of genius. But the truth is that most of the times it's painstakingly difficult. It's a lot of sacrifice. It's a lot of failure and rejection before you get to something that is pretty good. And so, yeah, so just putting that out there. That's something that I'm personally working on, is to hide the brush strokes less, pull back the curtain, and show you guys all the bumps, scrapes, bruises, and shiny foreheads. If it will help you and inspire you to not give up and not get discouraged whenever things just don't work out magically on the first try, because they rarely do. So there you go. Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you're still watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, hey, subscribe and hit the thumbs up button, because it helps with the algorithm, and maybe 20 more people can find this on YouTube and find it useful. But most important of all, and I think you know what I'm going to say next, is believe in yourself, and you got to enjoy the journey, because that's the best part. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling. I'll see you next time.